for no reason other than there was a pilot with a brand new, pilot was a major, instructor pilot, 2,500 hours, lots of experience, and his backseater was a brand new second lieutenant student learning how to be a Strike Eagle backseater. And they had an engine fire on the range, started climbing out from low altitude, started to go home, and then the front seater starts to go through the checklist, and the back seater says, okay, I'll get the checklist out, I'll start doing this. He goes, no, I got this. So the little second lieutenant felt a little intimidated by the big experienced major, and he didn't speak up. And so the pilot went through the steps like you're supposed to do. When there's fire light on, you reach up, press the fire light. So you press the right fire light. When you press the fire light in a Strike Eagle, it shuts the fuel valve at the fuel tank. So the fuel stops flowing from the fuel tank to the engine. The next step involves taking the throttle, selecting that to off. So he took the left throttle and put it off. When you put the left throttle off, putting throttle off cuts off the fuel valve at the engine. In a Strike Eagle or any fighter aircraft with a large afterburner, the fuel hose is huge so that when you're in full afterburner, it can move a lot of fuel. What that means in mil power or less is, if you shut the fuel valve off only at the fuel tank, there's 30 seconds to 45 seconds of fuel in that hose that you isolate in case of a fire by hitting the fire light and shutting off throttle. Problem was, it was a right engine fire. So by hitting the right fire light, he shut off the fuel valve to the right engine, but then there's that whole thing of fuel still feeding it. So that's why you're supposed to shut off the right throttle. He shut off the left because he wasn't paying attention to his little backseater, and he had just got out of the Eagle, did a fake tour flying T-30H where the fire lights are left fire lights on the left, right fire lights on the right, so his brain goes left, left, as opposed to talking about it with the backseater who knew it was a right, left. About 35 seconds after he shut off the left engine, the right engine shut down. Things get real spooky in a Strike Eagle at that stage, and they were only at 3,000 feet. So he also had done one other thing, which was through the fire bottle, which throws halon down the engine bay. So at that stage, with no engines, no generators, and low altitude, they both punched out of an airplane that should have come home with no problem. So that's just to give you an idea. When Jen says things like, please speak up, don't feel intimidated. If you're somebody that somebody's trying to speak up to, don't bark them down, because it may make a real big difference to you in how things turn out. So that's just my story on, to illustrate why that's an important concept. All right, today, we talked about takeoff emergencies last time. We were all here together for this stuff. So we're going to talk about landing emergencies today. And landing emergencies, basically I'm the military, so when you're military there's an overview slide. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. Alright, so talk about the statistics, landing incidents, and then we're going to have discussions and talk about how you can get in trouble here at Garner specifically. Talk about ADM again, because that's what the FAA likes us to do, and instructors like us to do it, and really that's what it all comes down to. Most of the time when people make a mistake, they made a mistake because they made bad decisions. Talk about your choices, go on with further scenarios, and then we'll talk about the stall spin, which is the #1 cause of fatalities in sailplanes. Go on our final scenario, and then just talk about some last few landing issues to discuss. Alright, flight safety. Is there an accident pattern? Well, technically, if you look at glider statistics, I just pulled these because they were available to me on another slideshow. They're old, but around 60 to 70% year to year, and that holds through to today, occur in the landing phase of flight. Every year, and it really hasn't gone down, in the sailplane community, we lose 6 to 9 people per year because of decisions made and accidents that happen in the landing phase of flight. So this is an important safety consideration. If we're going to look at what's the worst way or the most likely way that you're going to get yourself in trouble, it's in a sailplane. That should be of no surprise to anybody, because we don't have an engine to go around. When we come in to land, we get one shot. Alright? So what are landing incidents? Hitting objects on approach or on the ground. stall spin on approach, not making it to a landing field and putting a sailplane into trees or harsh terrain, hard landings, collisions either in the air or on the ground trying to make it to the same airport, and then either I'm too low, which basically also means I'm probably going to be too slow, possibly landing short, undershooting, or I'm a little too high or too fast and I'm landing long or overshooting. Again, landing accidents stubbornly stuck at between 60 to 70%. Again, even if we reduce total accidents in the sailplane community, I don't see how this statistic ever changes. We can reduce accidents. We have been on a fairly decent track, but just because of the nature of our business, most of our emergencies are going to be in the landing phase. So what lessons can we learn from this? What can we do? The important part of this is not to lecture you and tell you, here's what you need to do, here's how to be safe. That's not why I'm here. I can't tell you how to be safe, but we can talk about things to get you prepared. Here's one question I'll ask. Before you guys go fly, before you take off, you're walking out to your airplane, you've done your pre-flight, you're getting in. How many of you think about your landing before you even take off? Louise, you do? I know Greg does. The reason why I ask is, the other day we had a very large crosswind. Would you fly your pattern differently? We're going to get to that. Some people do, some people don't think about it, and then it seems like they're caught by surprise when things happen in the landing pattern. So, do I think about my landing before every flight? Actually, I don't. If it's a very nice day, no wind, typical, I don't give my landing a lot of thought. I do think about it, go, yep, not going to be an issue today. But if things are out of the ordinary, winds are higher, clouds, temperature, a lot of people flying at the same time, I give it a thought. Before I even go fly, I think about my whole flight and where the incidents are. It's an Air Force thing because we always used to brief our whole flight and think about our whole flight, so that sticks with me. But it's something I notice a lot of people don't do. And I tell you that only because of observations of what happens when they come back and they seem surprised by the conditions because they didn't give it forethought. So that's what this is about, is giving you some thought today so the next time you go out there, you have an idea of how to deal with things.
And really, if you're coming back after a 10 or 20 minute flight, there really isn't an excuse to be surprised by the wind.
Oops, that's the right place.
She's it.
Alright, so first scenario, just to get you thinking, we're in a Schweitzer, so everybody should be fairly familiar with that here at this club. You're 1.5 miles west-northwest of Garner, but you're only at 1,200 feet. You got caught in some sink, having a hard time making it home, but it's a nice day. Some scattered clouds at 5,000, the winds are from the south at 5 knots, maybe gusty 7. Temperatures are fine, altimeter's low, but hey, that's fine, nice dense air. There's PW5 just called entering left downwind to land south. No big deal, right? What's your RTB plan? I'm going to pick on the youngsters here. Hannah, you're 1,200 feet, but you're 1.5 miles away from the field. What do you do? How are you going to get home? Where are you going to go?
I definitely turn back immediately to try to get back over there. And I would, I'd see, I might have to land in straight just because it's 1,200 feet.
Well, let me ask you a
see
simple
how
question.
the lift and sink would be going as I was going back, because it might affect how far I could get. What was your question?
What speed you're going to fly?
Fast.
Fast?
In the 233, I'd probably be going 65.
See, I'd say that's probably too fast because that's going to affect your glide. Number one, you want to get your best glide. So the best glide home at that speed is probably your best glide speed. So that would be the best way to go. In the pattern, 55 plus half the wind, so you'd be 57, 58, maybe 60 max on final. So that would be the way to go. The real issue is here, you're kind of low.
I'll
Matt?
make a comment here before you get to the details. I've seen in some people's logbook K3VA, that's not apply. When numbers start with a number, airport designation, you don't use K. Just to remember.
So, anybody else thoughts? What's the main issue here? Go ahead.
Well, if you're far out and mile and a half might be far out in this situation, you might just wanna go land downwind. I mean, land to the south, go head straight for the runway and land south, if you're worried about making a normal pattern.
Okay, and that's the key point. Knowing what situations, I'm not where I should be altitude-wise. So what's the problem? Major problem is a lot of people focus their flying on getting back to the entry point for downwind, as opposed to focusing on what the real issue is. So if you're following a consistent ground track too, and you're used to flying your approach here at Garner, and every time you come in, you're hitting, you know, an IP coming in at 45, and you're flying the same ground track day after day after day, you might be forgetting the basics that you're supposed to fly on angles, you're supposed to fly on altitude, you're supposed to judge things, and I've seen that. I've seen people that are very low still extend their downwind, turn base out there, and you're going, why? It's because you get in a habit pattern. So that's something to be a comfort level with what the pattern's supposed to look like, despite the fact that you're low or you're not where you wanted to be. So if you're focusing on the IP, or they say, okay, babe, I need it back to the IP, now I'm going to enter my downwind and fly the pattern, you might be really getting yourself in a situation that's going to get ugly. It works well if you reach the IP where you're supposed to, and it's the right thing to do for the conditions. But what happens, again, like in this situation, when you're not where you're supposed to be? Experience shows, and that is direct observation shows, that people tend to try to do the same things they always do and don't really adapt for the situation. That's the whole point of these safety meetings, is to get you to think that maybe I should do something different in this situation. So we talked about, if that's what you're going to try to do from out there, go all the way around the left traffic, come in and land, you're going to find yourself so low it's going to be ugly, especially in a Schweitzer. But that's what we're supposed to do, right? That's what the FAA wants us to do. But the real question is, the goal is the touchdown point. What you want to do is fly your airplane so that you can safely get it here. So how do you do that? Well, you have a lot of options. Number one, you can not go all the way out, just do an abbreviated left downwind, come in and land, cutting off the corners. You could go a right approach. Right traffic, come in and land. You could get down to right traffic and realize you're still too low to go all the way out there to your normal base position, so you're going to turn early, aim for the middle of the field, and roll out down to the south. We've got a plenty big runway here. Yeah, you'll have a longer taxi back, but that should never be your concern.
Yeah, wouldn't the pattern have been the other direction? Since the winds are out of the south, 180 at 5 goes to 7.
You know, if we're out of south, we want to land to the south.
The NNS are not the north and south end of the field, it's the south runway and the north runway,
Yes.
sort of like numbers on the
Sorry,
runway.
it's not a magnet, it's like the runway numbers.
What he's saying, I think your TAF, or I guess they.
It said 180.5, that's the same thing shown here, winds from the south.
Well, where's south of that picture?
South is where it says north. That's what I'm saying.
That's not confusing or nothing.
My bad. Next time I'll put 20 and 02, but our runway's not numbered.
Maybe if you put north at the top, like.
Yeah. I'm just trying to show Garner's runway and coming, from the west.
What do you got everybody thinking anyway?
I got everybody thinking. Again, as Hannah mentioned, she might want to just go in opposite direction. The real question is, you have a lot of options. And the options are really what it comes down to is, where are you going to point your airplane? And one of the things that I always do when I'm coming back to the field is I don't point at the IP, I don't point at downwind. I point at the end of the runway that is closest to me, and then when I get close, it's like I got all kinds of altitude, I go what I want. But I point at runways when I come home. I point at landing points and then adjust when I get there. Alright. That's where ADM comes in, and that's what I was talking about. The reason why I asked this question is aeronautical decision making.
Can I make one point?
Yes.
On that? Like say, fly first, and once you kind of make your decision, when you get a chance, then try and make a radio call to let somebody know that you're doing something non-standard.
Right.
Like there are other aircraft coming in, and they'll, the way they know where you are, have an idea. They'll give way to you.
And call early if you're gonna do a non-standard.
Yep, if you don't know or you're in trouble, you can also call early and say, hey, I'm coming in low. So if somebody's just coming home because they're done or they're at the end of their hour and they don't have to wash out their altitude and get in your way, they might be able to make a decision to make it easier for you.
You know, there's something else that just occurred to me. If you're a inexperienced pilot, or you haven't been flying a while or something like that, and you give a call like that, because you're not real sure that you can make it or something, give them a call like that, I don't know whether I can do this. The ODO or somebody may come on the radio and offer you some suggestions, because when you're under stress, sometimes your decision making becomes a little less clear than if you're sitting comfortably on the ground.
And that would be single pilot resource management.
There you go.
If you're off by yourself, you know, if you're concerned, there's always somebody down here on the ground. There's nothing wrong with saying, oh, I'm in a bad situation, what should I do? We might tell you the best situation is, you know, you might want to consider landing out, because the winds are changing down here. Or we might say, yeah, just point directly at the base turn to land south. Don't aim at downwind, don't aim at anything, aim straight for a base, and then come in, make a 90 right and land. So good decision making is a learned skill. It's also a skill that you can think about on the ground ahead of time. And it's involved with both implicit and explicit training. Explicit training is stuff like this, where we're telling you these are some considerations, these are some things to think about. Implicit training can come from just watching other people, seeing how they react to things, and learning it yourself and surviving.
Detail.
Yeah. So again, that's what your decisions are based on. Experience, knowledge, expected outcomes, evaluation of events, known or expected risk, known or expected returns. The point of all these safety briefings is not to lecture you and say, here's how we're going to do operations. The point is to get you to work in this area, to learn how to make decisions and how to use things to reduce the risk with a plan of action.
Of course, one of the challenges, probably the biggest challenge, if you could put that other slide back up, to make a good decision, right? You actually have to have accurate knowledge of multiple facts and reasonable expectation of the outcome and reasonable expectations of risks and rewards. And hopefully you get that from experience or from reading.
Alright, so we're in the same Schweitzer, and like you said, I might go straight for the straight in. Alright, so you went straight to the base turn, and for whatever reason, you hit a little lift, you're a little scared when you're out there, but now all of a sudden you turn final and you find yourself at 680 feet over the damn threshold. Crap! What now?
Put out the boards.
What does that mean? You're at 680 feet, you're over the road, you're staring down.
Slip.
You're high.
Land long. 360. Do not 360.
Go around.
Go back and do it again.
This is where landing gets interesting. It's a sailplane. You don't have an engine. This is why landings are kind of important, and this kind of discussion is important. What do you think? Can you make the runway at that height?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
What you need to do, it seems to me, one simple solution is to proceed onto the downwind immediately, and then you can enter a base easily, and your numbers will start to work out correctly.
Matt demonstrated that to me when he pulled the pin at 600 feet, and I went into a rope break, and he said, look at your altitude, and we were at 600 feet. He said, you're not in an emergency situation, you're in a normal situation. Land the damn airplane.
Yeah.
I was paying attention, Matt.
Yeah. Now, just to give you an idea, on our runway, you would have to have a glide ratio of 4 to 1 to get down before the end in this situation. Alright? That's including no rollout.
How about just fly all the way down to the end, stay right over the strip and do a downwind landing?
Okay. Perfect. That's what I want to do. There are many, many options in this situation. The worst option is to probably go full boards, full slip, and go, boy, I hope I get this down before I wind up in the vines. Go ahead, Hannah. Say hi.
Hello, TSS.
What's the pizza?
Airport manager, was he?
Is this technically the vice president?
I'm gonna hand you.
Maybe it's
Left,
But not yet,
left.
yeah, there are still a lot of
All right. The important consideration here is you are high, trying to get down to the runway directly straight ahead is probably not going to happen. So the next question is, well, where should you actually be 600 feet at? It's usually on downwind. If you look at most soaring books, they say you should be between 5 and 600 feet abeam the touchdown point, which is still 300 feet in front of you, by the way. So as, you know, some said, you can actually just turn base, make an immediate left turn, go back to base, turn around, and you'll probably hit the base turn at your normal altitude at that stage, as long as you don't have the boards out the entire time. You could do what Carrie said. You actually have the room to fly to the end of the runway, saying you always stay above 200 feet, but give yourself a cushion, say 300 feet. I'm going to go till I hit 300 feet, I'm just going to turn around and land downwind. Okay, that depends on the traffic as well.
Now, do we know how far we can go with 100 feet altitude in the sky? How many people do know that?
Right, that's a good question. How much altitude are you going to lose in a mile in a 233?
Well, you're talking about PW5 now. Let's stick
Well, I
to
said if you were,
PW5.
what if you? That's what I said. That's the other thing. What's the difference?
What is it, 18 to 1, 1800?
I tell you what, can you call back, we're in the middle of the safety meeting. Jen Flair,
Give some.
yeah, call about 11:30. Okay.
All right, pub's closed, so we can stop
Drop
this.
the time on me.
Some fan talking real loud.
Realistically, I'll answer the first question. A PW5, let's say a 233, is roughly 20 to 1. I have no idea what ours is. It's not up to factory specs. It's got dent wings. It might even be bent for all we know, so it could be 18 to 1. But let's just say 20 to 1. You're going to lose 300 feet in a nautical mile. So what does that mean if you're a PW5, as it says here? You're going to do better, right? You might only lose 200 feet in a nautical mile.
Less than that.
Right.
You're almost double the
So it's more like 150 feet, but it's actually somewhere between.
What do? You start thermaling and claim you were never in the pattern.
Right.
I think I've seen that.
No, you didn't.
So that's the thought. High is, you have a lot more options high, but again, the worst thing to do, and what are you going to try to do? Your first instinct normally is, oh, I'm high, I got to try to get down. First instinct is to step on the rudder, drop the wing, pull out the boards, and go, it's a 233, I can make it down. If you do that, you may put yourself in a situation that really sucks. Because if you wait too long and lose too much altitude, you might not have enough room to land and stop at the end of the runway, and you'll be in the vines or in the trees.
And when I get this thing back and it's fully overhauled, the first person that puts a dent in it is going to read my wrath.
Matt.
Let me remind you that in Europe, most countries in Europe, they do the patterns at 150 meters, which is about between 150 meters and 200 meters, which is between 500 and 600 feet. So the fact that we are making patterns at 1,000 feet is probably leftover from flying airplanes, flying at public airports. So when you're at that altitude, you have plenty of altitude in a high performance glider, even a Schweitzer, to make a pattern.
And that's
You
correct.
should not panic.
And that's the thing I wanted to bring out here, is if you're trying to do what you think you need to do, I'm coming in to land, I roll out on final, I'm high, oh, I gotta get down, instead of actually trying to reassess, where am I? I don't need to get down yet. I need to go back out and get it right the second time. All right?
And this discussion is about landing, but let's not forget that with regard to decision making, the landing is the point you find yourself at after you made a bunch of bad decisions before that.
Tom?
One of the things that, talking about the decision making, is you need to recognize where you are the whole time, not just point at the field and, oh my God, now I'm at the field. what do you do when you get there? You recognize well before there
Exactly.
that I'm now at a pattern altitude, whatever that pattern happens to be, that will let me safely intercept whatever I need to fly to get back to the field and not have gotten there in the first place. That's where the decision needs to be made, is to recognize just from where's the field from me, how high, where, orientation, etc. Whatever I have to do to get there and to not get to this situation.
So here's the question then, how does this happen? Because it does.
Yeah, but when you're coming in on this, you gotta constantly reassess what's happening, that a lot of people do. All of a sudden, I'm low, so you know the spoilers stay in, and then because they're in their mind they're low. Now, like you said, you got high, or vice versa. You're high, spoilers are out, and they come through where normal is, and never put the boards back in and get low. So you need to all the way around. You need to keep asking yourself, am I high or low, and reassess what's happening.
Tom Watson?
Where you are now.
Having watched a lot of landings here, and listened to a lot of people talk about them after them, and also made a lot of landings here, and had my own brain engaged after it happened. I think one of the critical skills that we have to do, Tom was on track with, as you're coming there, you are thinking, how high am I going to be? What's going to happen to me? We all know as we come in, everybody here, I'm sure, has been a victim of this. All of a sudden, your vario is screaming 10 knots, and you're not sinking at the same rate you were before. Or, all of a sudden, that little needle is going to the bottom, and you're sinking much more rapidly than you were before. So, a half a mile out, your brain should be thinking, if I get in big sink, here's where I'm going. If I pick up a little lift, here's what I can do. The wind's coming from here, I'll set up on this side. A constant evaluation. I think we call it situational awareness, don't we?
Yeah. But again, I asked why it happens. I'll give you my, it's not this example, it's more the next one. And that was low. There was a time I had a guest in my back seat. I wanted to impress him with soaring. It was a beautiful soaring day. Should have been great. It was one of the weekdays we actually had soaring. So I took him up in the Super Blonic and got off at 2,500 feet. Got two thermals and I couldn't get above 2,500 feet where other people were up at 5,000, 6,000. I'm like, frick. Well, you've all seen those days. So I'm down by the fairgrounds thinking that's going to work. It didn't. So then I said, oh, look at that cloud that's south of 460. I'm going for that.
You're in what?
Yeah.
Never land.
In a Cirrus?
So
It opens
I started heading towards that cloud, and as I hit 2,000 feet and south of 260 or 460, I looked back at the field because I was, I went,
I looked at the field.
crap. And I looked at the cloud ahead and thought, that's further than I thought. This sucks. So I turned and pointed straight at Garner. I was on approach. So as I'm flying towards Garner, I'm going, well, I got a 10-knot headwind, so it wasn't as good as you might have thought it was. So I said, well, I better fly 55 knots, and that's my best L over D plus half the wind. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm watching the runway, and it's not moving in the canopy. So I am on glide slope for 27 to 1, and my whole focus became into the runway, canopy, and is there movement? And I'm driving in, I go, okay, I'm landing out, and I'm not sure we even have a trailer for this thing, and I know I can't take it apart with just me and the guy in the back seat, so I'm in trouble. So I start picking out a field, but I said, right now I'm still on glide slope, please let it go down just a little bit so I have room to pull the spoilers when I get close. And I'm driving, and then there's an audio variable in the Super Blonic that I didn't hear. There's a visual variable in the Blonic that I didn't see. And my friend in the back seat goes, oh, wow, that's a big one. And it woke me up. Because I was pretty clenched. And I looked down and it said +5. 5 knots up. And I looked back at the runway and went, if I turn, I can't make it. If I turn and don't get this little field, it's the one with the triangle and the square that's about 2.5 miles south of the field. It's a good field to land in, trust me, because I've looked at it up close. And I said, I don't think a straight into the field's the right way to go anyways. So at this stage, I'm at 1,200 feet, and I whip into a 45-degree bank turn, which I think is the only thing that saved me. And about 10 minutes later, I was at 6,000 feet. So it all ended well and didn't have anything to do with landing. But it had to do with I was so focused on the field and getting there that I blocked out everything else. And that's what happens. If you get down and you're flying approach and you start clenching as you're out there going, oh, I'm a little low, I'm going to have to get the final, you might have missed, especially in blue, it doesn't have an audio variable, that you hit some lift on the way. Half the time when you fly through our downwind, you get lift. My second ride in the glider, I was flying on downwind, and Boom was letting me fly the whole rides, and I hit that stupid thermal out here that everybody thermals in at 600 feet and climbs out of that I can't. And I didn't lose any altitude. And I got to the base turn, and I was still at 800 feet. And I went, I don't know what to do now. So Boom said, I got it, and he just kept flying and then turned late and came back on in. Because I didn't know if I should turn around, go back, I didn't know. But, we experience things. You might have picked up lift, but you're thinking so desperately, as Scott said, I got to get to the field, I'm low, that you miss the fact that you stopped being low. It's that focus. It's real easy sitting here to say, keep your cross-check going, reevaluate your situation. But as Scott said, we don't see that. When people get tense, that's when your cross-check stops. So this time you went all the way across the field to left traffic. You turned downwind, you flew down to base, and now you're turning final and you're low. You're now at 100 feet halfway down base, staring going, how'd I get here? I knew I was low, I'm still low, this really sucks. What do you do now?
What is the scenario? I don't understand it.
You're the same stretcher, you're coming back to the field. One of two choices. You land straight ahead in the field that's right out there, and it extends past the road. You can actually do that. But again, if you just cut to the field, you still have 100 feet. If you can make a turn, angle into the field 30 degrees, don't put the speed brakes out, make sure they're in, come in, and when you're over the field, then you can pull the speed brakes out of line, land, fine.
So how tall is this building?
Wait,
This building is tall.
excuse me,
Yes.
field elevation's 80 feet, right?
Yeah,
You're
talking about
200
feet.
there.
Sorry, yeah.
So you're
100
20
yes,
feet.
that was my point. You're 20 feet. You should be landing straight ahead, and that was my first one in that field right over there.
You're probably
There are no
going through
decisions.
trees.
No, there's no trees over there.
You're 20 feet.
Yeah, but there's no trees over there. There's a house. You can go through the house.
Say hi.
But I meant 100 feet AGL, that's why I messed up. But, yeah. Basically, the reason why I set these up is one of the things that gets people killed in gliders is the stall spin on final. It's the leading cause of fatalities. So, quick question. What causes a stall?
Joe,
Pulling
Go
too
ahead.
hard.
can we just back up just 1 second? I'd just like to make a comment.
Okay.
Talking about being far out and what speed you're flying to come back in. I would encourage everybody, for every airplane they fly here, whether it's the private ships or the club ships, run through some speed to fly calculations. This best L over D is generally never the right speed to get your best distance over the ground in any given condition. Should run through that calculation. There's been a couple of things I think on our wiki and some other places on how to do it. But look at different sync conditions, look at the wind conditions both behind you, in front of you, and understand what your speed to flies ought to be, because it's almost never L over D.
Bob Wander's book, Glider Polars and Speed to Fly,
Yes.
is a really excellent
Excellent
tutorial on
approach.
that.
Understand the polar, because it really, I've seen people coming back and saying, well, I was flying PW6 and I was the best L over D, I almost didn't make it. Well, yeah, no shit, because you were at the wrong speed to fly.
And you were kind of bad for being downwind. That is it. They upwind, so when you do get in trouble, the wind is pushing you to the airport, not
Yeah.
fighting you.
Especially in Schweizer.
But before you get to the
Doesn't
stall
make
spin,
any difference.
everything that's been said here boils down to two things. And the first one is, you don't want to be ever in a position where you're in a panic. That's what causes stall spins. Uncoordinated turns in a panic, and next thing you know, you're in a stall and a spin. So no matter what the situation, The object is to try to avoid getting there where you have to, where it really gets critical. And then the answer to that one is, the way to do that has been said in a lot of different ways, but you want to get somewhere where your pattern, a pattern, is normal. That could be like on the 100 AGL instead of MSL, point your nose right at the runway and come over the road and the threshold, make a turn, and you're in a normal landing position. It can mean, with that first scenario out in the northwest, you've got several ways of getting there, but the thought process needs to be, how can I get in a position, one way or the other, where I'm in a normal pattern, intercepted at 500 feet, 300 feet, 200 feet, but at that altitude, be in a position where it looks normal. So the whole thought process and the flight process is to get you to that position.
And here's another example, and I'm gonna let Gary talk to this one, because on one of these other great soaring days, Gary landed out about, what, mile and a half from the field?
Other side of the fairgrounds.
Okay, wasn't that far up? But Gary was in the same situation where,
Everybody else is at 6,000 feet. thank you
yeah,
very
everybody
much.
else.
Yeah.
Yes, we were.
I happily waved at him.
Yeah.
Well, I had everybody fly over me. He says, "Yeah, he's landed safe." Yeah.
But at one stage, Gary had to make a decision, do I go back to the field and make it to the field at 500 feet, in which case, if I hit any sink or anything else, I'm going to have a very big pucker factor, or do I do what I'm supposed to do and go, you know what, I can set up for a perfectly good, calm, coordinated, easy landing here in this field. And Gary decided,
Well, coming back from Wakefield, finally got out of Wakefield. One of these days I'm going to learn to understand that airport has a big suck factor.
All airports do. All airports.
Yeah, it just
You
sucks
get-
you down.
you
So
get
anyway,
there,
I
you get
finally,
comfortable.
I had already done two runs out towards Ivor and one towards the pig farm and looking for the typical lift, and back to Wakefield, got back up again, went back out, back to Wakefield, got back up again, made another shot back to Garner. And I got over the fairgrounds, and Garner was starting, well, I did not have final glide to Garner at that point. And so I decided that I was pretty low, I was like about 1,500 feet. And so I had a field right below me, so I took a couple of radials out from the field over the fairgrounds, some of the typical places that we pick up thermals, hunting around, see if I could find something to get back up. Couldn't, and finally at 700 feet back over the field, I decided to go back to that field and put it down. And I probably could have made it back to Garner if I had just done this with the PW5 boards in, but if I had hit any sink, and if you know, obviously we all know that between the fairgrounds and here, there's an awful lot of ugly trees and not a lot of places to put it down. So once you leave that area, you're kind of really better be sure you can make it. And Glide Computer was telling me I could make it. I had enough altitude, I just didn't want to take the chance on it.
and that's a big lesson too, you know, it saves a lot of that pucker factor and that tenseness or that focus becoming, you know, too acute to keep the big picture, make the decision early.
The one other thing I will add to landing out, having done it a few times, once you make the decision to land out, even if you hit a thermal, don't go off your decision. You've made the decision that I'm going to land out and I'm in the pattern and suddenly I hit this booming thermal, don't get sucked into it. Go ahead and land.
Okay, so going back to the question. Hannah, I'm sorry, I don't remember what your name is.
He's
Mark.
really new.
Mark's really new?
He's
Brian
really new.
Too new, okay.
Yeah.
Alright,
Nick.
so
Find another
what,
picture.
what causes a stall? High angle of attack, exceeding the critical angle of attack. So again, FAA will say any airspeed, any altitude, but realistically we're talking near 1G. It means you got slow in a glider in the situation. Turning stalls, what does that do to the stall speed? Anna, you know this one? In a turn, what's your stall speed do?
It is slower.
No, your stall, you stall sooner, the speed.
You stall sooner, yeah, that's what it is.
So how do you enter a spin in a turning stall?
And
Yeah.
then cross control.
Yaw, cross control. Nobody does that, right? Since nobody flies slow in the pattern, nobody's going to fly uncoordinated, especially somebody who's experienced. cross control, really? Nobody does that. So how does this happen? You know?